The broadcast is now starting in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, folks. We are here for We Speak Linux. This is our third meeting, and the purpose of our website is to help teach the Windows admins and developers about Linux through presentations and blog posts and peer support. We're hoping to grow a community of Windows admins and developers ready to transition into Linux, especially as Microsoft is adopting more Linux stuff, and because Linux is just cool. I'm finding the Linux people to be cool. Whitney Chapman here today is to talk about, we've all heard of DevOps, but what does it mean? So we'll hear about that on Linux. Join us on our Slack channel for live chat and the webinar chat channel. There's a link to that at the top of our website. If you have not joined our Slack channel yet, please do. You can subscribe to our newsletter on our homepage. You can join Slack at the top of the channel. We do have a Twitter handle for you to follow. And at the top, we also have the link to our YouTube video where this will be uploaded afterwards for you to view, as long as Whitney is okay with that. And we meet on the first Thursday of each month. So next month, we will be having Calculate the Top 10 List in Bash and How I Use Bash to Hunt a Virus by Thomas Limosino on June the 7th. So that's all I have. So I will change presenters over to Whitney.
All right. Thank you, Tracy. Can you see my screen?
I can, but I'm not sure they can yet. It doesn't. Yeah, I think so. We're good.
Okay, cool. So I was asked to go into a little more detail about not specifically DevOps as it relates to Linux, but DevOps with a focus in open source. So this is, there's a lot of Linux in all of these tools, but it's not platform specific, so it kind of speaks to everyone. Just a quick intro. Like she said, I'm Whitney Champion. I'm a systems architect and engineer in Charleston, South Carolina. I'm a mom of 3, always learning. It's a link to my website. I tweet a lot and have a passion for security, so you'll notice that a lot of what I talk about and a lot of today's presentation has kind of is more geared towards with security in mind. So that's the reason behind that. So what is DevOps? I have a love-hate relationship with this word, mostly because you never get the same answer from anyone twice. And to be fair, it's kind of hard to define because it's all of these things. So it's security, like I said, and development and infrastructure and the CI and CD pipeline and configuration management and performance and all of these things that you have to keep in mind, whether it's a small environment or a big environment or enterprise or not. So it can be a lot. So today, I mean, we could probably add a dozen more things to that list too, and they all have a lot of overlap. So today I'm going to be highlighting some of the open source tools, not all of them because we wouldn't be able to cover everything in an hour, but just some of the open source tools that I've used for work, for fun, for big projects, small projects, just stuff that's made my life easier in a handful of those areas. And these are all open source tools for you to use, and I highly encourage you all to at least try one or more of them out. And I will preface this by saying that not all of the applications that I'm going to show will fit the bill for every project you'll ever use. Like any project, use what best fits your environment and your requirements. And if that's 1 or 2 of them, fine. Or if it's 8 of them, even better. Just be mindful that whatever you introduce to your environment comes with its own set of security recommendations. And all of those tools need to be properly configured and secured, just like anything else that you're running. So this is most of what I'm going to go over. And these are all, like I said, open source tools that I use on a regular basis to help me do my job. And just about all of them work across multiple OSs. So the first one I'm going to dive into is Packer, and this one is pretty versatile. So you can use Packer to create Docker images, to create VirtualBox machines, to create VMware machines. It works across multiple cloud platforms like AWS, Azure, DigitalOcean, even stuff like OpenStack, you name it. So if you wanted to create a secure baseline OS for your environment, if you wanted to maybe pre-install agents on machines that you're going to deploy across the board, anything that, like any big apps that are going to take a while to provision, throw that on a VM before you start deploying it out. Just stuff like that to make your life easier. So this is all it takes to build out a this example in particular builds out a base AMI in AWS. So in this case, I've already got a secured baseline that's got Docker installed and it's already hardened. I think in this one, I actually was using the CIS baseline image. And if you're not familiar with CIS, they make they put out secured like hardened images already that you can use that abide by their standards. But this could be CentOS, it could be CoreOS, it could be whatever you want. But up here under source AMI that I've highlighted in green, that's the image that I want to start with. And then basically at the bottom, it tells you everything that you're going to do with it. So let's say that I just pushed out to the master branch in our GitHub repo, and that kicked off a job in Jenkins. Well, now and then Jenkins pushed a new Docker image to our registry. Well, if I want to actually do something with that new image, all I have to do with Packer here is tell it that I want it to log into in this case, it's a Docker image sitting in the AWS's container registry. Just tell it to log in, pull down that image, and now we've got a base AMI that's already secured. It's got Docker ready, and it has this this new Docker image from our latest build already on it, so we can push that out to X number of instances in our AWS environment. So it makes it super simple. And once it's done, it'll make that AMI, and it'll be available for us to use across all of our instances. And you can even run what's called a post processor at the end of this. So this would be after the provisioning step at the end. That it'll take this whole AMI and it'll basically turn it into a vagrant box, so you can run pretty much the exact same thing locally, which is kind of nice. So another example, the previous example just used basic commands at the end to log into Docker and pull the image down. Well, this one will take the image that we were using, and instead of doing things in a shell script, it'll take a Ansible playbook. So you could pretty much do anything you want. You could run Stigs. You could run. You could deploy just about anything in a playbook and just have it run at the end, so to provision whatever else you need on your OS. So those two examples were after your infrastructure is already in place and you're basically just provisioning everything else on your systems. But we can also build out all of our infrastructure with Ansible. So it doesn't have to be after it's already built. It can actually build the VMs, it can build the networking, it can build all these things, and it's not, it can do it across multiple clouds like I mentioned earlier. So in the next couple examples, we're going to actually use it to build out the underlying infrastructure. So you can deploy your entire network. So Ansible has modules that can deploy a VPC. It can deploy your subnets, your route tables, your ACLs, your NAT gateways, your internet gateways, anything pretty much. So you can deploy the whole network and then build on top of that. And if you don't want to have a whole Ansible playbook that points out to each of these, like you don't want to have an Ansible playbook that builds out all of these things and then you're unable, like you'll have to go back manually and delete all of them. So that's the nice thing about CloudFormation. If you're familiar with AWS CloudFormation, you can build out this whole stack and then it can roll it right back. So you don't have to go manually delete the VPC that you just made. You don't have to go delete the gateways you just made or anything else. In this case, you just use Ansible to deploy a CloudFormation stack, and then once you're done with it, you can either tear it down or you can redeploy the same thing over and over again. But this makes it repeatable, and it makes it, it's only one step to tear it back down, which is kind of nice, and it manages it all for you. And you can run a similar playbook. I think there's plugins for or modules for Azure to do this similar thing with their ARM templates and a couple other platforms as well. You can, if you're familiar with KVM, I run KVM on my home network, and whenever I want to spin up a new VM, this is literally all it takes to spin up a new VM. You give it the name, you can tell it how much memory you want or any other variables you want to throw in there. And then you give it a XML template for your VM, and one click later, you've got a new VM in your KVM box. And the VM template.xml.j2, it's a Jinja template. So if you're familiar with Jinja templating, basically this J2 file will have, it'll have spaces in there for you. You can put variables anywhere in that file, and it'll replace it with the same variables that you've used in your Ansible playbook. So if I wanted, if my VM name somewhere in there or any other specifications for that VM, you can reference those in that J2 file, and it'll automatically fill that all in for you, which is nice. So we can even provision new apps or servers with Ansible. So you can deploy the AMI that you just built with Packer in the first two examples. Like I mentioned before, you can run a system hardening script or a STIG. You can deploy on one of the projects that I'm working on, we're automating the deployment of entire elk stacks, Collide servers, OS query agents, Waza, if you're familiar with OSSec, Waza is based on the elk stack, and it's a fork of OSSec to deploy HIDS agents to all your systems. You can automate an entire deployment of Graylog and Graylog agents with Ansible. There's a ton of stuff you can do. So, fun fact, and that might sound daunting at first because it's, I mean, usually deploying systems like that is not any simple feat, but there are already roles in what's called Ansible Galaxy that do a lot of these things for you that somebody has already gone and built. And it takes very little configuration on your end to make it run in your environment. So if you're not familiar with Ansible Galaxy, it's kind of like Docker Hub is to Docker. So there's all these pre-built roles that, I skipped one. It has all these pre-built roles that can build out basically whatever you want. This particular example has NetData, which is a really awesome monitoring tool, by the way. I encourage you to check it out. It's pretty cool. So this example actually has a Vagrant file in the GitHub repo, so it'll spin up a VM for you and then provision it and put NetData on it so you can run it on your system. And if you're not familiar with Ansible roles, it looks kind of daunting at first because there's like 7 directories under one role, and you don't know what means what or what goes where or the actual structure. So you literally have to run one command to initialize a role, and it'll spit out that entire skeleton for you basically with the default contents, and you just fill it in with the content that you want. Or worst case, you pull down another role from Ansible Galaxy and just kind of see what they did, but the structure is already there for you, so you don't have to worry about it. So first use case for this, this is something a few friends and I have been working on for a while now. On one of our projects, we have to deploy a Collide server and several OS query agents. If you're not familiar with Collide or OS query is something written by Facebook, and it's an awesome tool. Basically, it takes all of your infrastructure and makes it queryable with essentially just SQL. So you can say select star from processes or from users or even like registry items on Windows systems. There's just about any configuration item on your system that you want to look at, you can query it if you've got an OS query agent running. And then Collide is a really awesome front end for that. So it makes it, I mean, this UI is absolutely beautiful, but it makes it really easy to query it and see it all on one really nice, pretty page. And it's super fast and super easy to get a hold of. So there's already an Ansible role for Collide server. So you deploy that with one click, and now we need OS query. Well, there's already a role for that too. So you can deploy both of these. Somebody's already gone. I put the link down in this bottom one. But this guy's already gone to all the trouble of writing a Ansible role that deploys Collide server and OS query agents to all of your systems. And it takes next to no work to get it running on your own. So in this example right here, select star from last, you can see all the last logins for any hosts that you query. But basically, you tell it to point to a variable file and your playbook that actually does the agent deployment. Tell it which servers to point at. In this case, I'm pointing it at Linux servers. And it'll deploy the agents with all the right config files to all of your systems, and it'll know to go back and talk to that Collide server that you just spun up. And it's simple as that. So I put this image here. This is actually a screenshot from mist.io. And if you're not familiar with mist.io, I just started using it last year, and it is awesome. So if you've got systems in multiple cloud environments, or even KVM or any servers even just lying around your house, you can or OpenSec, or it talks to so many different backends. But basically, it's this nice shiny interface that'll take all of your infrastructure and manage it for you, and it gives you visibility into all your VMs. It even gives you visibility into your billing. I highly encourage you to go check it out. It's a really cool project. So you can, the nice thing about it, or one of the nice things about it, is you can deploy Ansible scripts from Mist to systems on basically any system that you've got running, whether it's in AWS or if it's in Azure, or if it's on a local machine that you've got running on KVM. You can deploy to all of those systems just by seeing what you see here on this in this window. So give it a name, give it a description, tell it it's an Ansible playbook. You can either give it the whole file, or you can just copy paste the script in that window. But it takes care of the rest for you, which is awesome. So in this case, this is kind of a more in-depth example, but this is something that I've used a handful of times. Whenever I stand up a new environment, typically I want to stand up a VPN, and my go-to has always been OpenVPN. It works really well. It's an awesome project, and bonus, it works with Google Authenticator, which is also really nice. So I can deploy an Ansible playbook from Mist.io that'll provision an OpenVPN server. So I point it at the instance that I want to point it at, and then I tell it to go get the package, install the RPM, install the Google Authenticator package, configure SE/Linux, do all these things from one click inside Mist.io, and my VPN is up and ready to go, which is awesome. So the next thing I'll touch on is monitoring. So this is huge, and this is something that I'm pretty passionate about because it's a big part of security. There's a lot of really awesome open source monitoring tools. I already mentioned NetData, but some of the more in-depth ones, one of my favorites is Graylog. So Graylog is, there's an Elasticsearch, MongoDB, and then their interface on top of it is what their stack consists of. And then one of the coolest parts about Graylog is you can run agents on all of your other systems. You don't have to just use syslog to pump out all your logs. You can install what's called collector sidecar, and basically instead of having to configure endpoints on all your systems to say, I want these 6 log files and to point to this Graylog server. The collector sidecar talks to the Graylog server, and it already knows, because you've configured it on the Graylog end, what you want to be pulling off of all of your systems. So you don't have to maintain a file that says, I want all of these things. You tell it in one place on Graylog, and it configures all of your agents for you, which takes a lot of the headache out of that side of it. And the Graylog server and collector sidecar can be deployed with Ansible with pretty quickly, which is awesome. Another one that I use pretty frequently is the Elasticstack, which is, if you're not familiar, Elasticsearch, Logstash, Kibana, and Beats, which Beats is what does all of the log shipping on all of your systems, similar to Graylog. Graylog also uses FileBeat and WinLogBeat. I think the Elasticstack has a few other beats that you can configure as well. But again, you can deploy this. There's already Ansible playbooks available that I'm pretty sure Elastic provides for you to spin up your own stack and spit out all your agent files and have it up and running and with minimal effort. And another one that I use pretty frequently, this one is also built on the Elk stack, but it's actually a fork of OSSec, the host IDS, which I mentioned earlier. And then it was later integrated with Elasticstack, and then they pulled in OpenSCAP to do all the scanning. And it is really awesome security tool and actually checks a lot of boxes if you're in the need for all of the compliance pieces on a project. It, like I said, it does IDS, but it also does, I mean, you adjust your log aggregation because it's based on the Elk stack, and it detects on a lot of anomalies that are already baked in. So they've already got stuff like failed login attempts, file changes. There's stuff like specific to OpenVPN already built in, privilege escalation, all kinds of things are already baked in that will alert you. Whether it's in the dashboard, they have a pre-built dashboard for you that's all focused on the OpenSCAP scans and these security configurations. So you have an awesome high-level overview of basically your security posture, your entire infrastructure, and it's all searchable and alerts on whatever you want it to alert on. So to sum it all up, there's a million ways to do all these things. That's a lot of tools that I just mentioned, and it's unlikely that you're going to be using all of them on the same environment. But a lot of them work together really nicely, and they're all open source and free, and you just have to evaluate which ones are right for your project and pick the tools that are right for the job. So leverage open source where you can, and recognize where you can't. But a lot of these can do a lot for you, and you don't have to go spend $1 million on some of these other vendors. A lot of these can be tailored to your environment and your needs, and you can get a lot of the heavy lifting done. And last but not least, security baked in always. A lot of these tools, like I said, keep security in mind and make it a lot easier to not leave that as an afterthought. So that's all I've got. If there's any questions, I don't know how you want to do that part of it.
There's a question panel if anybody wants to put any in there, so we'll see if anybody puts any in there, and I will relay them to you. Somebody asked if there was any demos.
No demos.
And somebody said you were amazingly fast.
I've never done a webinar format. I'm used to workshops, so this is totally out of my normal. So I
I
apologize, but I
I
can make Slack
understand.
available if you want.
I understand that. Trust me, I've done the two different ones, and they were totally different.
Right.
One question: do any of these tools work outside the cloud structure?
Absolutely. Yeah. A lot of them do actually. And a lot of them are, I'm running a lot of them in a ESXi environment right now on bare metal. So yeah, you can definitely do it that way.
Okay, that answers Chase's question. Anybody else have any questions?
I have a questions panel on mine, but I can't see anything of it.
Yeah, it's just for you to ask questions. It's usually just
Oh,
the organizer sees it and relays the questions to whoever's talking. So, one says your lab looks rad. Just checked it out, and says thank you.
thank you.
Which your lab does look rad, I have to say.
I like it.
I want to come play in it.
It's come in handy many, many, many times.
I bought me an Ansel recently. That's the extent of my lab.
Oh, those are awesome, though. I thought about that.
So it's me learning Linux because I don't know any Linux. So I'm learning quickly,
Yeah, those look really neat.
which is why I started this website and these webinars to learn Linux and to help other people learn Linux. So, well, I think that's all the questions. I don't see any more coming in, and people just say they appreciate you taking your time to do this, and that's it.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys.
Thank you. I will stop the recording now.